Poets have always been able to strip language down to express complex things in a simple but profound way. Right now, with terms like transgender and gender fluidity getting lots of attention, our Arts Upload poem by Ejno Martin seems pretty timely. It's called Liberated. The producer-videographer is Justin Vaughn.
I was just sorting through my mismatched laundry, which is a mundane chore for someone who never taken any pleasure or pride in the clothes they wore, when a long black dress showed up at the bottom of the pile. And I was wearing it before I even had a chance to wonder why. Oh, and it felt good. Too good. Good like finally. It felt so good to finally see a sexy reflection looking back at me in the mirror. So I doubled down and stole my girlfriend's lipstick. You know, I've been wearing eyeliner for years, but it never occurred to me that I guess I was secretly, you know, some kind of a queer. I've been wearing only the blander shades of gray because I never felt like I was worth more, but when I saw that new smile staring back at me in the mirror, I knew that these pink lips meant that I was a peacock, a songbird on the first day of spring, and I actually couldn't wait to go shopping for new clothes. It's like I couldn't wait to wear them and show off my sultry contours and be pretty, beautiful even, and maybe like I was worth affection and lust, sweet reptilian lust. So after realizing the dresses are for special occasions, I set out to go buy new things for the everyday of my new life. And I shaved my legs to a stubble and electric razor and set out for the thrift store, ready to feel the warm sun on the thin straps of my shoulders. And I wasn't even worried about the long stares and snickers because I never expected so many elated strangers. It's like they knew that it was a new day for me, that I had just emerged from a vegetative sense of self to discover savage curiosity and confidence. And when I made it to the store, oh sweet transcendence, the excess of exciting possibilities for a future I fully expected to spend wearing the kind of t-shirts that you buy in bulk would have paralyzed me if not for my prancing in a variety of fishnet stockings, skirts, and pastel t-shirts. Who would have known it's so much fun to have a purse? And I finally allowed myself the kind of pink and black shoes that I'd always wanted since high school. I bought the kind of clothes I'd always liked seeing at the foot of me and my girlfriend's bed, and that fascination of mine suddenly made so much sense. Why I'd always thought women were the stronger sex and idolized the likes of L7, Heavens to Betsy, Sleater Kinney, and Bikini Kill. I mean, Rebel girls, you are the queens of my world, and I do want to take you home so I can try on your clothes. Duh. And home I went, taking every opportunity and detoured scene, finally snug in my own skin, the breeze catching my hems like the sails of a warship, returning to peace in the place they belonged. And I haven't stopped, even after my parents stopped talking to me, even after my girlfriend flipped out and moved out on me. Life is just too short for hiding and lying and languishing alone with a secret self that no one ever meets. And I had to form a new family and make new friends. But that first day, when I found myself at 24, a vibrant colossus of cross-dressing genderqueer, that's when I started counting my age as a person. No longer a prisoner to a gender that I'd never really been.